Hey Monolith, how are you, man? Where is Cookie or that person from previous? Yeah, he's not. Probably he's kind of like busy doing other stuff. So yeah, he's not always. He's not always on the stream. And that's why I said like it was good thing to have him. Because if it was the case that he's always on stream, then no, I wouldn't be saying that. But I do understand that like you guys have other things and not always want to watch me do stuff. Like this thing, like when you keep watching it over and over, it gets repetitive and sometimes even boring. So I guess like sometimes you get fatigued and you want to move away from it and come back later on, maybe after some while. I'm not sure this area here, like I'm just trying to guess. Most of the time she have her hair cover in it, I guess. But I would just want to have like more interest in the forehead. It's not like just flat area. I doubt it is like that in reality, Okay, so let's look at more images. And since I'm like using this image, maybe I'll just add, something to point at it. Boom, go to the biggest line we have. So this is dependent on like how much I'm zoomed in. Okay. It is Ana de Armas monolith. I'm trying to make Ana de Armas here. But I still like I need to push the likeness even a little bit. But I guess because this will be like endless me trying to fix things. So what I think I will just like eventually move on from trying to perfect the likeness and try to like progress the model more into like more finished stage, and then maybe like backtrack, go back to it and try to infuse more likeness afterward. Because probably like I know like this phase where I'm just like trying to do very small things sometimes end up being like almost like chasing another, like you see slight differences, and even like the same person have slight differences from one picture to another due to the differences in the lighting and like lighting health. And even if those images like been shot in like let's say within like a year or 2 years, like in a year your body, like the fluids, the fats, everything in your body do changes and shift depending on like health and whatnot. By the way, I saw that what you sent, the like the images you sent me on Discord. Do you want to like a quick like to review them quickly? Okay, so let's open up Photoshop and I'll create a new document. Let's just do that. I'll have like a big one just for the sake of doing this. And can we drag? Yeah, we can drag drop. So let me just quickly put them in the Photoshop file and we will, I'll share my screen with you. And here we go. By the way, I don't keep my stream live for a long period of time. Usually like I'll private them eventually. But since I will be doing like a critique or like a paint over thingy here, I might, we're now just re-adding the same thing over and over. So I'll leave it for longer than usual, this section of the stream. so that you can come back to it, but expect that eventually I'll, just remove the usually I don't remove them. I like to keep them for myself as a way to keep track, like to keep track of like journaling. I like to keep them just so that I can look at them like back in time, like and see what I've been doing, right? I like this aspect of things. Let me just actually show you what I'm talking about here. So I know it would be more like interesting if I will leave them, like really leave them for you guys, even to, I doubt they will gain much viewership or interest, because usually those are not like produced well, and they don't have like a coherent flow to them. So people usually wouldn't be like, like they might not be interested. But just like to show you, like I like to see this when I look at them. Like this is kind of like, even when you look at the history there, okay, that's like a month ago, and like eventually you see like I have 300 of them, and they all like probably like here we go to, like this is I actually cut streaming for a period there from like November 2024 to September 2021. Which is roughly like less than a year. But during that period I have not cut streaming completely, although I wasn't like very active streaming. But what I did is I switched to Twitch. Like I decided to keep up with the Twitch weird stuff. And even here, like eventually, like I think this will cut and go back to, because that was my second time coming back. If I scroll down here, eventually there's going to be like a big gap again. So from December to April. Again, I'm not sure. Maybe I haven't worked, to be honest. Like maybe I haven't worked on anything, like, because sometimes I take a break from streaming. I'm not like very dedicated. Like if I want to, like if I want to, like if I want to kind of define my kind of streaming, am I like a dedicated streamer? No, I'm not. Because again, like I was sculpting a naked figure. Again, they would ban like this is kind of like too sexual. Other like technically like you'd see like other streamers, like hot tub streamers and stuff like that on Twitch. They're like almost naked and like really, like no sculpt would look like a human body, like with like the skin color and everything. It's not gonna be as sexual in no way. But then again, like Twitch is weird about that, and I think they should change their regulations regarding nudity in art, especially like if nudity is not like because sometimes like drawing you're drawing like let's say a hentai or something like that, which is like the point of it is to make it sexual, right? But if you're doing like an anatomy, or if you're doing like a classical pose, right? And if you're not trying to detail like genitalia very much, like just like, have like that region, but not trying to detail it to like anatomical details, and then that's kind of like messed up. But then again, like that's Twitch. So, I just decided, okay, Twitch isn't for me, at least for now. And I will go back to YouTube. I might go back to Twitch, like if I were just doing like a head, like a sketch of a head, or maybe like when I'm doing like things, like when I'm done with the body and like now my character is clothed. But then again, like what I didn't like is like fragmenting my stream, like streaming part of it on Twitch and part of it on YouTube. Man, that's kind of like, again, like this is not a recipe for growth. Although again, as I said, like I'm not focused on that much, but again, still, this is not a recipe for growth. So I decided, okay, maybe like YouTube is the way. Like YouTube does, is better for that. Okay. So you can see these are your images. Let me just put them. Okay. Nope, that's not what I wanted to do. I wanted to move them. Move this, and let's just put this, and then move that. Let me just increase the size of the canvas, maybe make it longer instead. Yeah, so we have like more rows. And let me just put this here, 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 and this is just the concept, and here and here. I don't want this. I want to put like a solid color there, dark gray, so that it's easier to look at. Put it at the very bottom. Come on. Yes. No. Okay. Okay, so let's talk about this. Where to start? No, YouTube are less strict when it comes to these kind of things. I'm not sure if they will keep it that way, but I doubt, because YouTube is a much bigger platform and there is so many different topics being and YouTube also allow you to although like Twitch allow you to label it as mature, but then even if you label it as mature, it would still not allow you to show like chest and genitalia and stuff like that, even if those areas not very detailed, unless like they're very, very, very something like if you look at your by the way, you haven't sent me like your model from the back. If you can, just go ahead and like take a snapshot from the back and send it. But for example, like the buttocks, right? Although like technically like I don't know how to explain it, but like you'd see people who are dressed up and wearing like G-string, it would consider to be dressed, like covering the sensitive areas. But technically, come on, G-string is almost like, a naked butt or something like that. And still, but like when you're doing like a grayish model, that, and my model weren't like textured, by the way, because again, I know like when it's textured, it looks more real. But it's just like a ZBrush sculpt. And my channel is an art channel. Like I'll be like categorizing it properly as 3D art and doing like sculpting, digital sculpting and whatnot. Okay, so let's look at the first one. What can we do and what should we do? Let's just create a layer at the top so that we can sketch on it. Let me just see, that's a big brush. And can we do? Yep, now it's working. Okay, let's pick a more bright color and go 100% opacity. Yes. Okay. And maybe actually go with a contrasting color like bluish, lighter bluish. And saturation, drop the saturation. Yeah, something like that. So what I think now, first, I don't know like what's your level in anatomy. Yeah, I'll look at it. So I'm not like, I don't know where you level at anatomy, but I think you still can improve your anatomy. Like I would recommend you to study anatomy more. I cannot tell like from the reference you sent me here, but I see like this is kind of suit that you want to create, and you have like the concept and whatnot, but I don't know if you have other anatomy images. So I would recommend you to include anatomy images in what you're doing. Hi Cookie, welcome back. So I would recommend you to have more anatomy, images. Just look around, and I would like recommend if you can invest and buy, like a pack with like a set of images, and that is like for one model, especially when you're learning, and you can always keep it as a reference to go back to even if say like you don't want to have the exact same body style, but at least like have something, and wouldn't hurt to have like more than one set over time, like invest in them, like maybe have someone for a very slim model, like someone with like big chest, because sometimes even on like the body you might want to have like flat chest, like more gifted and so on. So get those, and that would help you, because mostly your problem here is related to anatomy and related, if I'm not wrong, to lack of reference. So here, for example, when I look at here, like I can see like you have the area here, and I don't know what this is here, but there's like this weird, sharpness happening here. Like there's like this line. It's kind of like trying to form this shape here, right? So if I delete what I have there, you have that weird line there. And I know like maybe you're trying to make the separation between the chest muscle and the shoulder, but usually that separation first like doesn't stop here. This is weird placement. And even like the way how the volume happening there is weird. So work on that. The other thing is her chest. So when I look first, like it's hard to read your rib cage, so I would recommend that you look at like maybe more skinny model just to kind of like try to get the rib cage. And while talking about the rib cage have like again like this is not accurate, but it does have like because it starts like narrow at the top, like here narrow, and at the end it will have like bigger, wider, opening, and in between it will have like more like this egg-like, maybe you can like call it an egg-like shape, right? Of course, like this is not accurate. Look at images to have more accurate. So at the moment, like you have a lot of volume happening here in between. So which means what telling me that is one of two things. Can't we undo? Yeah, there we go. Yeah, okay. So and that tells me like either you need to make your rib cage wider, right? Like because again, like if we were to do like something like this, although I think like this is way too wide, like make it wider or get like your shoulders narrower. Now, of course, like this is like would be easier to be defined by looking at images, right? Like get yourself a good set of references and work on it. And for that reason, if you have a good reference, it doesn't hurt even to kind of like take your image, like just exactly like you did here, and just like place this, go to Photoshop and place this on top of like your actual human body and turn on visibility, like turn it to like 50% and see like where like the more, like the offensive area, like the offenders. Is it like the rib cage is too narrow or is it the shoulders? Because like if I look at the shoulder just like by themselves, like they don't look too bad for me. Like maybe they're a little bit wide, but not too wide. But then again, like but I believe like the waist is narrow. But then again, like, do we have people with narrow waist like that? To be honest, no. This is way, in my opinion, especially at the rib cage, because your narrow, actually that's another mistake. Your narrowest point is at the bottom of your rib cage. No, it should be like below the rib cage. It should be somewhere there, the narrowest point. So that's another mistake there. Or you should like, because I do think like you have a very long rib cage. So technically maybe like try and like make your rib cage end a little bit earlier, right? And then you go to the narrowest point here for the rib cage, and then you go to the pelvis. I'm not sure if you're following the 8 or 7.5 head method, but because you have not included the head, so I cannot like tell for sure. But also either from the images or you can do it. We don't have undos. Okay, I'll just erase it. So if this is like an 8.5 head figure, we could easily just like go ahead and like drag. So usually the 8.5 head would be like from the chin, like say this is like where the chin is, and then kind of like goes to the nipple area, and then goes from there. From the nipple we drag another one to the belly button, which is roughly here, I would say, and then you drag that one and and take another one and put that at the crotch area. That's another head. And then drag another one to the like middle of the knee, but that's with like another one in between. That's another head, right? So like these are the heads. And then finally we drag the last one to the bottom of the leg. But because of perspective, I think if we were to go to the heel, that would be the bottom. I could be wrong, but again, I think I'm right, kinda. And then we would have another one would be there. So if you count them 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, that's fine. But now, yeah, this is kind of an 8.5 head figure, roughly. So yeah, let's go back to, now we just kind of justified that this works, which is cool. What we could do, just for the sake of trying to measure things, if I bring a line from the shape here, and let's make it thick, So let's go fill, and yeah, something like that. And let me just drag from here. I don't want the arrow end, so let me just take the arrows from there and start from here, drag down. This is too thick, so let's just go 25, even less probably, but let's try 25 and drag. Yeah, I think we need to have less, so let's go 12. 12 is good. So drag a line there. So this is can be used as our reference. So like this is like the length of the head, and why I want it, because I could now just go ahead and rotate, right? So based on that, you could also now like come here and like start measuring. So like from the hand, you have 1, and then there's like 2. Done. Oops, I don't wanna, let me just copy it because we don't wanna lose the original one. So I'll go there, and so let's just start again roughly. So you'd want to have like from the tip of the fingers, right? This is not accurate, but I'm trying just to estimate. And you'd kind of start like then hold Alt. I think we need to approve before we move on. Hold Alt and add another one there, right? And another one, apply, another one there. So yeah, so you have like 3 hands, and then you have on the other side, and like across here, probably you don't have 2 heads. I could be wrong, but I don't think you have 2 heads. Come on, stop. Actually, let me just lock these images below so that I don't keep moving them by mistake. Let me just select them, lock them. So yeah, you don't have like a full head. So which means either like we can now translate it to one of 2 things. Either you need to make your shoulder wider, one, but I think that would kind of break things. Or you need to make your head smaller. So when we make the head smaller, it means everything needs to get smaller. So technically, to maintain the shoulder as it is, we make everything a little bit smaller. So like you start shortening things. So just like have something as a reference to go back to. So if we decide like, okay, this is this is like a head here, for example, right? Then maybe like define your shoulder a little bit. And then from that point, you want to start, okay, like this become like the new measurement for the head. So if we're starting from the chin, so your nipples should end there, right? And then, and so on. The other way, to be honest, because we have the head is already like looking good at the moment, like the length, if we start from the bottom to the top, like all of these roughly like works just fine. We can even double check. Actually, they're not accurate, but you know, they're roughly around like a full head, roughly. It's not accurate. Like this head is like the longest one, to be honest. So again, double check these measurements. It would help you to adjust things. And I would assume like fixing like so what I would say, like your character is like more narrow than it is tall. So you need to make it wider almost in most areas. So like the rib cage need to be wider. The pelvis, that's the other offender you have at the moment is the pelvis. So it looks a little bit too narrow for my liking at the moment. So if we look at this area, it is too narrow. Now, if we want to make it correct, we need to look at like images, right? Let me just actually go ahead and grab like a good image for that, something that is not problematic. Let me just try like bikini model or something like that. Yeah. So again, this is just like as an example. It's not very like, it's like the angle is not perfect, but we can just use it there. Just, you know, as a guide or something. if we take this, let me just put it as smart object. Convert to smart, and we could now just make it smaller so that's not filling the canvas. And marquee, apply marquee. Okay, so here we go. So by looking at this here, if I were to compare it to what you have, yeah, so if I want to compare it to what you have at the moment, so you can see here first, when we go from that point, let me just hide the guides for now. Okay. So you can tell right away first, like by just looking here, that the model we have here, she have like much shorter, and she is like, even here, she is like wider than your model, especially on the hip area, and her like torso is shorter, which means, which kind of like telling me like, okay, so if we have like a line coming from here to there, right? And then a line coming from there, like it's not too bad, like I would say like the length, but it's still like feel like you can make it a little bit shorter. And the rib cage, like if you look at her rib cage, it goes like roughly there. That's like the end of the rib cage. So if we were to take like a dotted line, like there's where your rib cage should end, right? Again and again, like this is a bad one. Let me just actually do it, eraser, let me just erase. And let me just use a ruler, because it will be much better if we were to use a ruler. So yeah, if we look at like the rib cage, like roughly there's where your rib cage, and that will show them all. So let's just clear them. Clear, show extras, guides. Yeah, clear guides. Okay, so there's like the rib cage. You want to kind of like look at that. So, and even here, also another kind of like thing, although again, like to be honest, let me just make this correct. Let me just line her up. So I'll put like the shoulder there. Let me just line up the shoulders. And I know she have like a posture, so she's not like straight, completely straight, but I would try like roughly. Okay, so there. So we grab another ruler to the crotch area. So see, like her crotch is a little bit higher than yours, and also like the pelvis. At the moment, you don't have like any definition for the pelvis, right? And technically, like your pelvis should be like, let's say we decide like, okay, there's where the pelvis are. We kind of go like narrow, and then we come back, right? And you have like more definition there, right? So there's like a change in plane. So if you look here, like her rib cage coming down. Why am I drawing? What am I drawing? Yeah. So if you look down here, like she's go from there, and then see like that transition into the pelvis. Transition into the pelvis. And I know like maybe you're trying to make like something more stylized to increase the, you know, like the 60 hourglass shape. If that's the case, that's totally fine. You can still do it, but make sure that when you do it, that you still like maintain like the placement. So it is fine if you want to kind of like go narrower and come back wider, right? So that you have much more defined. Do it, but then again, do it in the correct places. So like you roughly like your waist would be below your rib cage. As you can see here, like her rib cage is there. And there's like her rib cage, and the waist goes a little bit below. So think of it like this, like if the rib cage in there, right? Like you would kind of go there roughly like below and then come back, right? You go below and roughly come out. Now, like how much do you come out? That's depend on how much you want your character to look, you know, like an hourglass shape, right? So here at the moment, like your character goes like one straight line coming from the waist, but technically no, you want to kind of go in more like, you know, like there is like this, and probably like there's gonna be like a transition here, because again, like if you remember, like the pelvis will come somewhere here, and that will be like your pelvis, right? So you want to have more definition to it. And the easiest way to look at that is to see images. Now I know in some stylization, like people will go like really very undefined, but even when they go undefined, like they will have like more curvy, right? Like especially around the buttock area. So they have like more curvy, you know, like the more cartoony or, you know, like pin-up models, I guess that's what they're called. Because again, like in the thigh, like in the hip and the thigh, the widest area would be roughly here. So you would go like, you know, try to accommodate for that. So you would go like that. And of course, like every person is slightly different. So if you look at different images, you see different things, like different people have different shapes. So let's just look at another image, just to kind of like see another variety for the hips. So again, there is another one. We grab it here, and that's another one. Let me just make it smaller, because otherwise this is way too big. And here, so again, if you look at this, you go from here. Let's hope that, you know, like Photoshop, YouTube wouldn't be upset by showing, you know, bikini models. So from here, why am I not? Yeah, let's paint above. Oops, we're not painting. Y P. Yeah, that is okay. I guess I was using an eraser. So here, same thing. See, like here's her rib cage, roughly ends there, right? And probably goes up there and go from there to there. You can tell even like. By the way, another thing that would help you see, especially because she have like a little bit of a bend and like on her, like the hip is not straight. You see, like when it goes like the transition here goes that's because like we gone from the pony area of the rib cage into like more fleshy, so it kind of like bend like that, and then you reach the pelvis, and then you reach the pelvis. So the pelvis, usually how to locate it, just go to those you know, those points here. You can you can distinguish them, and technically that's where like the pelvis. So the pelvis like from here goes a little bit up, because from the profile, like if you look at it from the side view, it goes like this, right? And then goes something like that. I don't know like how they shape, but this is kind of like the pelvis kind of thingy, right? But from the side view, we're looking at her from the side view. So this is kind of like that point here, and it goes like in an arc. So like the highest point would be a little bit higher. So the highest point would be somewhere there. And then you would do that. So while you're doing this, remember this will be like roughly the widest point of the pony area. So like the pelvis would go, but like usually, because like you're not skinny, like usually you have the thighs, and the thighs are the thickest area, and not just the thigh, because you have the other bone. So you would think like this is the pelvis, right? Going like this, right? So the pelvis going like this, and then goes there and come back. Here, same thing, goes up and come back. And probably, again, I forgot exactly how it goes, but something like that. Ignore like the technicality. I'm not like good at like, I forgot exactly how the pelvis is looking, but something like that would be like something like that. Again, I forgot exactly how. But then it doesn't matter, because this is not going to be reflected on your, like on your body, because these are more internal bones. You're not going to see them. Like the only part of the pelvis that you will see is like this bone here and the ridge, like this ridge here. So that's the only thing that you would see. Now the other landmark would be down here, like see like this highest point here, like this would be like the highest point if I draw a straight line. This highest bone technically is not flesh. You might think It might be depending on how fat the individual is, but usually this is like the thigh bone. So what I'm talking about. So here you have like the thigh have a bone that looks something like this. So it starts with this shape, comes out, and then goes down, right? You could look at like anatomy for a sculptor, you know, to kind of like look at it. So technically, like this is what goes into the socket, and this is not going to be visible, and it goes back out like that. Actually, we could just look at an image. Thigh, or actually it's have femur, I guess it's called a femur. Let's look at the femur bone. Yeah, so when you look at the femur bone, there is like a sketch for it. So as you can see, this is way too big. And that's what you have there. And that's why like the highest point here is due to this. And this is not gonna go straight. Usually like your femur goes, like it goes in an angle like that. And like that extension here goes in like this. So this will be like the highest point of that bone. And goes to like in an angle until it reaches like the knee down there roughly. And that's where you get like this. So based on that, as you can see, like these, like if we were to draw like planes, right? If we draw planes for the body, actually I was drawing on this, yeah. So if we were to draw, think of it this way, like we have that landmark there, and we have like the highest point probably up there. So from there, and we have like the femur down there, right? Like the head of the femur there, or I don't know exactly what it's called. So you have like a plane, and then you have another plane going down, down like that. So, and then another plane going in. So technically, like those are not on the same level. So that goes like to the narrowest point in the waist. The narrowest point you can say technically at the very end of your rib cage, maybe a little bit lower than that. And then like your rib cage comes there. So then we go to the rib cage from there and go to the rib cage from here, right? So that's kind of like the rib cage. Now, of course, sometimes it's hard to read the rib cage. You try to, as much as you can, to read it. And since we kind of like define the lower section, then we go up there. And remember, usually it does have similar shape to your lung. Think like, imagine you're trying to draw lungs. And then like you have the top opening, which is up here, which is around the neck, because like your neck will come out of it. And here probably, let me just correct that. And this will be like your, you know, like that bone, the collarbone, that bone, and then you have like those ribs coming like that. Again, rib cage is one of those hard things to, you know, you need to look at it a lot and just study it with like everything else. And that's why you see like you cannot go like really far away from this when it comes to the shoulder. So be careful, because sometimes people might have the habit of going very far away. Of course, that sometimes you have to break it if you're doing something stylized. So for example, if you were to look at like Street Fighter characters usually, and fighting games in general, usually they have like a little bit of a broken model, because they try to kind of like have wider shoulders, and sometimes like their limbs like not exactly how you would imagine them, and that's because they want to make it easier to give them like much more freedom in the movement. So that's kind of an exception there, but that's not always the case. Like that's if we're talking about like fighting game characters. Okay, let's just hide all of those, and even here, let me just go there. Yeah. So back to this again, let's just refocus. Here, if you think of it as a correction, first you need to adjust your proportion. One of the most important thing is to have the definition. At the moment, this is like more a straight line until you reach roughly to what we talked about, which is the femur bone there. But no, like try and like have more straighter, like this is more angled up, and then like goes in like that, and then goes up. See there, like now we have more interesting, and make those make sense. So when it goes up here, this is kind of like the pelvis, like the pelvis bone there, like the arc, and then like you would have like that, you know, like that point here and the other point there. Don't make them too close, like try to make them far from each other, like almost to the edges. And that would allow you also to define these lines here. When you adjust them correctly, that allow you to define these kind of lines. Yeah. So another thing here, like this, try to have like more smoother shape. Of course, like you want to have like on the sides, like these lines kind of to have like separation between the stomach and the sides. But at the moment what you have, which is kind of like making it looks weird a little bit, is that you have, you know, like this weird thing in the middle. I don't know what it is, but you have it. Try not to have it. Put a belly button. Now try and like mark like where the belly button is. You could rely on the, you know, like the head measurements we did. So the belly button should be like right in the, like first head, second head. Then yeah, at the end of the third head, which is roughly probably gonna be here. And your pelvis should be around, like right like below it, like your those like two bony landmark, and around those two bony landmark it shouldn't be like this, as I told you, like this should be wider, because again like the arc there, and then goes in, right, then goes in something like that, and this goes until you reach the femur down there, and once you reach the femur, which is here, then you start, you know, narrowing your leg, right? And you start narrowing. Of course, this is not accurate because I'm like sometimes like I need, as I told you, I like to have images to pinpoint these kind of things, but this allow you to have much more interesting in the shape. Now also for the chest here, so as I told, like the rib cage probably need to be wider, but if we do that, remember if we made the rib cage wider, yeah, okay. If we make the rib cage, why I can't paint now? That's weird. I think it's lagging. Yeah, it is lagging. Weird. Photoshop sucks, man. Let me save it and open it again. I think Photoshop is not responding. Okay. Again, just look around, like look at anatomy box and try apply it as much as you can over time. Again, like I'm not perfect at it, my friend. I still like do my mistakes, and sometimes I wonder what's wrong, and you know, I try to, you know, work around it. So let's look at this, by the way, because this is like an actual model, and this actually applied similar to what we talked about. So if you look here, she goes here like almost like this is where kind of like the end of her rib cage, like the waist is roughly under it, like almost under it. Then from here it goes out, right? It goes out. So her pelvis, again, if I were to estimate, like her pelvis probably gonna be there, like roughly there, and then like see like it goes in her case, like it does have more a curvy look to that, but again see like we go to the widest part of the thigh here and then go in. Now of course like she have a like her legs are squeezed together, so that even make it much more obvious. But roughly you want to do something like that. So again, here same thing, we go there and then we go out until we reach. Of course, like technically most people, like you would find that there's even this line wouldn't be like one line then goes in. It usually would be like, and even if we were to look closely at this model, probably would see something similar. Let me just actually hide the grid. No, not the guide. I want to hide the grid. Show pixel grid, yeah. So if we look here, like if you look closely there, you would find that, okay, like roughly like probably like there where her like, like those landmarks. Of course, we cannot tell because she's, like covered. And then like in here, like goes like that. And then like we have like a transition here. And then it goes like there's another plane, like there's a hidden plane happening around here, and then goes down, right? So technically you have like these different planes and then goes up here. Now when it goes up here, you have the rib cage. Remember the rib cage, if we were to look, for example, like at her like neck, it will be like way lower because it's at the base of the neck, right? So, and there's gonna be like her rib cage, and her rib cage will be like something like roughly like that, right? And then goes up to roughly here. Again, I cannot tell for sure because we don't see. And then goes down, and then we come back up. So roughly something like that. So when you look at this, okay, then there's her shoulder. See, like the shoulder does not go really far away from this. And then like you have like this, like the bone. By the way, this, when you look here, this is like the bone of the, like this is like the head of the bone, right? That bone. She have like that bone roughly there, right? And now this kind of like goes into the scapula, right? So we have the scapula coming like that. It will be like roughly there. And then you have the clavicle back there and the scapula here, right? So you have like that bone there. And then you have the scapula back there. The scapula would be something like that, but from the back, of course. And in that, you have like the socket. In this bone, like the triangular, like wing bone at the back, you have the socket where this would be sitting. But as I said, like be careful not to go really too far away, although it starts looking weird, right? So again, there's like a nice balance to strike there. Try to do it. And of course, like we usually, our like final judgment would be the picture we're trying to create. So, and that's why like sometimes you follow the silhouette and then you try to make it justified, right? So we try to kind of create this, and then after that we start, okay, if this goes there, I don't want this to be too far. So my rib cage, you try to kind of then enlarge your rib cage until you get like something that would, still like look reasonable, as an overall, right? So you start, okay, saying, okay, there's like that, and then there's like the waist below, then we have the hips, and then we see like, we're trying to kind of like figure out where the transition happening between this and that, then goes there, and then goes there. Of course, like there is stylization, as I said, so not everything we can do it, and then we go there. Now, finally, you have the crotch area, so the crotch goes there, right? And by the way, there's something that people do wrongly, like the crotch is not wide down here. Like sometimes you will try to make it very wide. No, the crotch is very narrow. I cannot show that because again, that will get you, like I'll get like strike or something. But like the crotch area is much narrower, and then it goes wider, right? It goes wider. And then like you have your stomach. So if we look here, like if we say like the rib cage goes like this, right? So your stomach should be like roughly a straight line, come from here and to here. This is your stomach, and once you start reaching down here, you start going with the shape of the crotch, right? Something like that. And of course you have the middle line there until you reach the belly button somewhere there. So that's like your belly button, right? And then like you have that landmark for the pelvis, another landmark there for the pelvis, the other one. And be careful that you always have some room between this bone and that line. It's not like this line is at that, like that bony landmark. No, there is like a transition between them. And even sometimes you might need to tweak afterward. That's why like it's invaluable to have like a naked, figure to work with it. By the way, even here, if you look, again, same thing. We have the rib cage, right? Somewhere there. Of course, like this is from an angle. And then there's like the rib cage down there, and then it comes out and then goes back. We cannot see the other side that much because of the angle. You have like that, the bone, like the middle bone of the chest. And then you have like the opening of the neck. And this is drawing, so it might not be very accurate because when you draw, sometimes depending on how good the anatomy of the artist who drew that image. And I'm not, by the way, good at drawing anyway. So then you have, again, the narrowest point is there for the, like for the waist. Roughly around there is the belly button, would be like roughly around the narrowest point, maybe a little bit higher or lower. And then you see like there, like you have first line, then second line, then third line, if you want to simplify. So technically, this is the widest point. That's where the femur is. Remember that bone that have an extension goes like that, right? And goes down, go to the, to the knee. And from here, you have the pelvis. So roughly, the bony landmark of the pelvis would be there. Again, it went back to being laggy. Actually, we could draw using this because I guess like Photoshop is annoying. It's getting laggy, so let's use something different to Photoshop. Something outside Photoshop. Photoshop is annoying. Okay. So here like you'd have like that roughly again. I could be wrong sometimes, but like roughly there you'd have like those, like, and as you see like where the arc there, again, we can like roughly there's like that transition change in the angle happening, right? Of course, with the butt volume and whatnot. And we don't care about what goes afterward. Like you can tell, like I don't remember the shape of the pelvis exactly. I know it does have like a weird shape to it, but because again, everything is inside. So technically what you care about is this here, like that part of the thigh. And just remembering where it lies, it's roughly like at the end of the crotch, kind of like roughly there. And then like this have like a, like it does define things related to your model. And then, yeah, the crotch area down here, as I told you, be careful. Like it does look like that. That's totally correct. But technically, like when we go to the volume itself, no, this goes more narrower and start getting wider. Like technically, you can think of it this way. This is kind of like goes, if I were to draw it, like I draw like a wide line like that, and then I draw like another line like this. And then like this goes to the stomach area, which is kind of parallel roughly. And you have like the center line there, and then you reach the belly button, right? And what's under, be careful here with the women especially. This area would be like nicely, it's called tummy. That's kind of like what they would call it. The tummy area would have like a nice, like it's actually the part, it's the belly button is not the part that goes in or out. It's this area if you look from the profile. So if we were to look at the profile for, just quickly. Yeah. So if you look down here, right? So this area here is the, and again, like we're looking at very skinny models here, but usually, even something like this, but this is an AI. These are very skinny models. But that's like the tummy area, and that's like the more protruding from the side view. Even like a runaway model, like this here, for example, a runaway model. So this area down here. Let me just clear. So when you look here, look there, that's like the bony landmark, and that's like the kind of like the highest point. So it kind of transition there around that, and then like we reach the femur roughly somewhere here, I would assume, you know, somewhere around there, and then it starts going narrower. And here, if you look, like there's the crotch, of course, like you have that line, and see, like it's not wide, it's not too wide, and then eventually this goes into that more straightish line for the stomach, straightish line to the stomach. Now when you go to the straightish line, it's not like just like a straight. Actually, you have like, you know, like you have the six packs up to the belly button somewhere there, right? So you have those two at the top, and then you have like this one more unified area down here. And in that, as you can see from the highlight here, this kind of like goes in the belly button, and then this goes out like that. Again, try to strike a good balance, because overall, like all of this need to be homogeneous and nicely, you know, building from one to the other. And again, like if we look here, like there's like the rib cage. Roughly, I'm trying to kind of like figuring out where the rib cage is. It will be like something like that. And then there, sometimes you see like it's hard to see where the rib cage is, because you have definition in the muscle, right? So there's like these muscles there. So if you can like look at those, like she have, but again, like there's no definition on the inside, but technically like she have definition. So sometimes like the rib cage does not show itself very clearly, and it's more like, you know, it goes across, and you can see it just in the highlights. And sometimes you just like with experience try to figure out where it goes. So I can tell like there's a change here, so probably that's the end of the rib cage there. So I'll go and do something like that. Again, you don't need to kind of figure everything perfectly. These can be a little bit fuzzy, because technically when you look at it, you can tell like it is fuzzy. You cannot read it very well, but you can, again, because like the transition end here, and here same thing, it ends roughly here. You start seeing differences, which tell me like that like the support, which is the bony area, stopped happening, where like everything is trying to stick to it, and you know try to grasp it and grab it. So from there, like probably again, it depends on how how the arc of the bone is. Like probably it's gonna be like something like roughly like that. I can see like there is highlights somewhere there, so could be that. Don't get deceived with this line here. This is more like this here, like that here. This is more because of the volume of the muscle. It's trying to, when it kind of attached to the rib cage, it leave like a line. It doesn't show up here because of, you know, she can like have a twist, not twist, like a bend, which make this part is active, but this less active here. And same thing, like this line is again separation between the muscle, and this is kind of like an in-between area when you think of it. So this is like because technically like the rib cage start here, right? So this is kind of like the rib cage, right? So the beginning of it start getting deeper when it kind of like start like hanging away from the rib cage. So at some point it kind of like start like sitting on the rib cage, kind of like, see, like up there. So you can tell like this muscle here is sitting, half of it on the bony landmark and half of it not. And that one makes like this area more complex and interesting, because like you can see there's like a highlight, there's another highlight, there's like a groove going there, another groove there. Like you cannot see much things here because, you know, like the muscle, like the bony area is very, you know, like it's kind of like sitting on the bone there. Like the middle line is, of course, like usually, unless like she's bodybuilder, like you're not gonna see this line much. At the very top, you see it, you know, like that section from here to here, you can see it. Again, I'm not trying to ask you to do like very detailed, but that's why it's cool to have images of things like supermodels, or as I told you, like buy a set for these kind of images to help you do such thing. Okay, so let's zoom in and delete. And let me just actually bring your images here, because I prefer this over Photoshop. Like Photoshop is annoying, freaking Photoshop. Let's just drag it here. My Photoshop is laggy. I hate my Photoshop. It's buggy. I guess like it's broken for some reason. Let me just open the second image. We grab this. We want to grab that. we want to grab this. The hands, I'm not going to talk about them because I don't think we have enough time to talk about the hands. But, you know, just again, do something similar to, you know, just observe images. Hands are very complicated, man. I hate the hands that I have at the moment. They are very complex and demanding, but, you know, you can figure it out. And let's just grab the 2 images that you just sent us. And this one. So let's just make this big, and let's just not put it on top so that we get this. So here, if we look at these, if we move away from this one, this is exactly the same. So what other things you have like kind of wrong with your anatomy at the moment? I feel like your chest here is sitting kind of wrongly, because the chest should kind of like wrap on the chest. So it should kind of like have, it's now feel like it's kind of like just sitting there in space. They don't have spread around the chest, so you need to spread them more on the chest. So if you look at the chest from the, if we cut the body from this point, you see like, okay, this is kind of like the barrel of the chest, right? Roughly. And the breast would be kind of like sitting like that, right? It will be sitting like that, and the other chest there. And technically not just that, like it will be like less, like here, like blending more, and then the edge would be like more obviously, you know, rounder. And same thing on the other side. Of course, like this is not accurate, but I hope like you get the idea. And of course, like then like because you have the skin, like this will soften and this will soften, and you get like the chest, and of course like the nipples there, just to kind of orient you. So at the moment, like here, yeah, those are not like sitting. And another thing, like the chest goes like that, and yours is coming like weirdly like this. Think of it this way. You have the chest muscle here, right? You have the chest muscle, and the chest muscle should go like that, right? That's where your chest muscle is going. That's where your chest muscle is going. Now the breast like goes like that, and then it kind of like connect with this, because technically this line goes into the like the shoulder. Yours is now gone like somewhere, I don't know where it's trying to go, but like the chest should be like, if we draw it roughly, it should like here goes in a little bit and then goes out and start, you know, like following the, like technically this should be where like things goes in and out for the armpit, right? At the moment, no, that's not what's happening. So probably if I were you, I would raise this a little bit up, and then this goes in, and then this goes to the chest and connect to the chest, like something like that, right? And this will be like here, like I will raise all of this up to go like the armpit, and then you come out of this into the shoulder. Let me just actually show it, because you could see it on my model there. There. See there? It kind of goes, it goes like that and then come back. And what I was talking, see like my chest, how kind of like grabbing on the rib cage. So you want to have something similar there. So you want it to wrap. And as I said, like this is kind of like here, see like in the middle here, it kind of blend more and it's more defined on the edge. And by the way, you could even like define it if I want to, because it's symmetrical. Yeah. So, and by the way, these are not finalized in my case, so I can always come back. And of course, like if your model have bigger breasts, then like you need to take that into consideration. At the moment, like I don't have very clear, like there is no like overhang. So it's almost end here and goes there. Same thing here, like look at the rib cage. I have the rib cage, I very slightly hint for it there, and then goes here. And as you can see, like the end of the rib cage is the narrowest point kinda, and then goes up like that, goes there, and until I reach the pelvis, which is that point. And of course, like you don't need to do everything as I do it, but roughly, right? Because different model have different look. So, and that's why like the importance of the image. And then like I have the widest point here roughly, like the widest point roughly here. Of course, because again, like sometimes you have more volume into the thigh, so it might not exactly be that, like it might have a little bit more, and it could be like me doing it wrong, like maybe I need to do some changes. And same thing for the crotch. So the crotch first, it's not, in your case, it's very narrow in the middle and it goes, you know, like continuous. But no, like I try to give it like more volume because technically, again, you know, like if you think of like the actual body, this area have like volume. And then, and that's what I was talking about. See, like this is the tummy. This is what I was talking about, the tummy area. It's kind of like what's kind of go out when you look at it from the side view. Now my model, I want her not to be very, you know, like voluptuous, not like very curvy. So I try to keep things toned down, right? And see like here, and because again, like I didn't want my model to have like very harsh definition, but I could like go here and define like these muscles more so that she have like more, you know, like more masculine or maybe more fit supermodel like body. Okay, but then I'm not gonna take that line too much with me, like there. I'll just, and this take a lot of like back and forth. Even if I were to do it, like I'm not gonna do it like in one take. I do it, then I come back to it, then I try to melt it. And the secret to all of these things is to make them melt together. Like at the beginning, you might sketch them, but eventually you cannot keep sketching them just like very defined, you know, muscles. You need to start, you know, thinking, okay, like in reality, there is a skin, there is fat, things are not very strong. Another thing here, see like those landmarks that I was talking about? Here between the muscle area and this, you have like this nice interaction. So this is kind of like the muscle, right? So let's say this is the stomach muscle. And then you have another area here, which is kind of like your love handle, let's call them. There, and those continue like next to them. Now with the bodybuilder, those very obvious. In your model, because she's a female, you want to make them very, very subtle, but you would still want to kind of read some of that. Especially when I look at it from the side view, you can see there's like this area that's like this is different, right? You can see that there's volume here, then goes back, then goes, you know, like change direction, and the crotch area. Right, the hands is not perfect. I don't love the hand, and we will talk about the arm in another session. And I think like my model here, see, like I keep coming back. Like I think I need to give her more definition there. Like this kind of getting a little bit weirdly too wide. And yeah, so again, remember what I was talking about, the chest muscle? That's what I was talking about. Let me just draw it. So you have this, which is kind of like roughly the chest muscle. The chest muscle. And it goes down here, goes like this, and goes across. And from here, goes there and across. And this usually will nestle here, somewhere here. Like it goes like there. And then you have like this area here, and you have another section. You don't need to kind of like focus much on these sections, but you have like this section here, and you have the bigger body there. Technically, it's like this is like two sections there. Also, like there's like the bottom and the middle. And then the chest will be, you know, like somewhere kind of interacting with this. And the most important interaction happens like here, where this connect and where the chest goes, like the chest trying to go like that, and this trying to go there, and like in combination, we do this, right? We do that interaction. And that, if I undo, will give you, if you think of them like the other wall of your armpit, just to show you what I'm talking about. The wall of the armpit that I'm talking about is this. Like it's kind of like creating like a wall. So let me just make this stronger. So this is like the wall, because imagine like that, like little area, which is the armpit. Like this is the front wall here, and this is like the back wall there. And between them, Let me just undo. I'll show you a cross section there. If I show you a cross section there, see like there in between goes like the deepest area of my armpit, right? I even like would do something like this. I'll go and like push that. Of course, depending on how like fatty the individual and how defined, it might not be exactly like that. But then again, it's hard to tell exactly what's going on the inside. And here, when you see like, you don't see like my rib cage, like I tried to keep it like so that like this is like roughly the widest point of the rib cage, roughly. Now, in this case, like I failed a bit, but then again, like, you know, it's kind of like here, but I think it's fine. Again, we could work on that. Now, technically, usually, if you look at images, this like goes squeezed in. So if I were to inflate, like it will be very squeezed in like that. But because I wanted to take this to Marvelous Designer to create clothes, and if those are, you know, like there's no space between them, it will be very problematic. By the way, I'm not looking at my chat, sorry. So, yeah. And of course, by the way, like this is not at all finalized. Like I was saying to myself, like I want to go back and revisit the body, especially the hands. I wasn't happy with them. They look a little bit, you know, they're not like, I want them to look like fleshy, bony, and more, you know, like feminine. So I probably like will have more visits because, and plus like I don't have enough divisions. I recently went ahead and added another division, so my model sits at, I think, 20 million now. Unfortunately, that's because with the retopology, when I retopologized her, because this is like closer to the final retopology, it meant certain area have more more resolution than others. So unnecessarily, I have areas that have more division than they need, and like areas, for example, like the hand, they don't have enough divisions. Technically. And of course, like we go from there to the legs, right? And we can talk about the legs in another session, because I guess like it's getting too long talking about them. But then again, like just like the idea, I want to kind of give you like the methodology to do these kind of things. You'd want to look at these things and like try and like look at images and try to analyze things accordingly. By the way, although I'm not trying to do like Ana de Armas, the problem is like even if I have like her in bikinis and stuff like that, it's hard to find like a straight pose. So what I did is just like I went ahead and like looked up for images, right? Let me just actually, and hopefully like we get something that is not offensive. Like I'll take an image that's not too offensive. Actually, I'll draw on the areas that shouldn't be shown. Yeah, something like this image, for example. Let's just grab it and draw. Let me just draw lines on her body parts. Yeah, so if you look here, I cannot zoom in, because if I zoom in, I guess I can zoom. Yeah, I can zoom in. Yeah, okay. So here, if you look, like I was trying to kind of like get like the model here, and I'm trying to kind of like follow the body, and you can tell like there's very similarity between this and what I have. It's not exact, because I want her to have, a bigger chest. Like the model here doesn't have like that much of a chest. I was trying to follow in general. Like I'm not perfectly following it, but see like all the things that I was telling you, like the pelvis there, you have the belly button and so on, and you have the crotch area, and even like the arms. Like I don't like what's going on here with my model, maybe need to be retweaked, but everything is subtle, and you want to kind of like, do things. Of course, like eventually I might migrate from what I have here, because I want to have more of Ana de Armas body, right? So hopefully I can, or maybe find a model that have more, because Ana de Armas have like more curves to her body. She's not too curvy, but like she have like more of an ideal body, if that's if that's correct. Unfortunately, I couldn't find a lot of like, for example, she's relatively skinny, but for example, like that's an image of her. So I want to kind of like try to follow some of again, like this is not bad, but I feel like that's why like you when I showed you like I have some issues with the arms, because I was trying to give her more a fleshy feel to the arms, because her arms are not very tuned, like they're not tuned much. They're more, like not sagging because she's young, but you get the idea. Like they're not defined. They're more fleshy in a sense. So when you look at them, and also like you need to take into consideration, like my model is in a neutral pose, so she have more stiff body, and here she's more with a relaxed pose. So your muscle would have slightly different positioning when you do it. And still, like I don't like this area, even like when I look here. Of course, like she have like a more bent arm, but this is iffy. So, and you would see me like keep going back and forth trying to fix it. Of course, like there is a point when you say, okay, that's it, enough is enough, and you move on. So for example, if I were to look here, like this is still like a line that's debatable. Like I might shift it a bit, not too much, but I might try and shift that. And yeah, by the way, this line is, as I told you, because of like the shoulder muscle and the chest usually have a separation here, around here. Right? Of course, I don't want it to look like an anatomy book. So I want to have like a more neutralized way. And as I said, like I want her to have a fleshy feel. So there's a lot of things you have to fight when you're trying to do like a gaming character. So also like I'm thinking while I'm doing this, I want this to still be usable inside of Marvelous Designer, because if everything is very, like if everything is close from each other, it will look weird. Sometimes if you define things exactly as it is in the image and you don't make them like more soft, when you take it to Marvelous Designer, unfortunately, because when you design clothes in Marvelous Designer, it try to kind of like it try to reveal like the body shape, unlike in reality. In reality, like clothes hang in a different way than when you. It's kind of like similar to how like in reality, if you were to if you were to wear like very thin clothings, it will kind of try to kind of like give the shape of your body. And even worse, like in Marvelous Design in Marvelous Designer, in reality, like you have more static, like your body, like the clothes hang to different areas of your body. That Marvelous wouldn't do it in simulation very accurately. So yeah, there is like a lot of things that you need to take into consideration. And as I said, like now I'm just like telling you about your mistakes or like the things that you need to fix. And I'm now like questioning what I'm doing and saying, okay, like I'm telling him to fix those area and they sucks in my model. And you can see like this is kind of like the race. You always trying to improve, and there is like limitation to your ability to read and like read shapes and even to execute, because sometimes like I can see what I don't like, but it's kind of like I don't know, like I'm applying it, but I don't know like why when I'm applying it, it's not trying to give me exactly. Of course, if you give it enough time and you focus much on it, and if you have enough references and you have better understanding of anatomy, like actually anatomy in theory, it makes things easier. Because if I know that like this muscle, like this bone have to be more forward, it means that I don't have to one of the mistakes is actually the positions of my bones, right? And there isn't also like that's another problem. Like even if you know like anatomy 100%, our anatomy is slightly different. So there is like you can say there is a template, but this template have million like small variety in it, like from one body to another. Like this bone is a little bit higher, this bone is a little bit curvy on this individual, and so on and on. And also like in images like here, like she have more of a shruggy kind of shoulders, so that it increases like this angle there. And I shouldn't be like I shouldn't be deceived when I go here and not make this like way too shrugged. Because again, like this is the type of image I'm looking at, and also the angle of the camera does help with that. So yeah, you need to be careful with these things. But then again, here, like I'm still not happy. Like, is this correct? Like this is slight. Like I don't like how this. Like I feel it's not substantial. It's not full enough. Why? I forgot what brushes was that. restore custom. Yeah, there it is, smooth. So yeah, so these kind of things, like I would still like, and sometimes like to avoid like getting things in trouble, I do if I don't like an area, I try to do like minor tweaks to it, so that overall I'm improving or changing what I don't like, but I'm not changing too much to the level where I don't like it. So for example, here also, like you will see that more in like real images, and you wouldn't see that in anatomy books, is that like, especially with women, like you would have like this go out, like the highest point is somewhere here, like not at the shoulder, because the tendency for us is to put the highest point, like, like here, like probably like do this and then go like straight line. But technically, if you look at images, like especially with women, because of like the body fat accumulation, it goes more like the highest point somewhere here, and doesn't have to do, by the way, with the muscle most of the time. It's just like, and it goes, so like this is kind of like the highest point somewhere here, and then here like you have the bone. So like is this like the highest bone? Yeah, the highest point. But then like also like you have the interaction between the muscle and the chest area here, so it might shift. So instead, like you see like a highlight here happening because there's like the bone, but then like also you have a transition going there. And that's also like one of those areas that I always debate, like, okay, is my transition is good enough? Should I, like fix that transition? Does it look good? Does it look too much? So, and I don't think these can like matter much in the final product, because the final product, first, like she probably gonna have some clothes on, and even if she like can have something that show her, like let's say she have like a tank top, or maybe like a tube shirt. So even if she does have something like that, still. So yeah, even if I collect references back, how did you start out anatomy? Was it from an art school or self-taught? Because the body you are sculpting way more realistic. Again, realistic or not, man, like you start with the realistic base and then you tweak it. And usually like what you do is you just try to kind of like adapt, because again, think of this body, I could make her not realistic if I wanted. All I needed to do is just like, okay, I will look at like the concept, and then I say, okay, she have like the concept have narrower waist, maybe like these bone are not very protruding, then maybe she have like way bigger chest, right? Of course, without like destroying the rib cage, and so on and on. And maybe I don't need to have like very defined, muscle there, and I would mask them, right? And reduce that definition there so that you don't read much of that muscle. And you kind of go from there. And maybe again, like these bones do not read as much, and so on, maybe, and you do that. And most of the time, like the stylized part of the body would be like the face is the area where you will receive the highest stylization possible. So so what I usually used to do, but that was like back in time, is I got a subscription with a website called 3D.sk. They provide you with a lot of 360 images for the same model, so you'll have a lot of images from different angles for the same model. I'll get the one that I like the most, like more skinny, average bodies, not fat people. Of course, like you need to keep some of those, because sometimes you might want to do like a fat individual. And like I collected those over the years. Like I got them really early on, and later on, like more technology starts showing up. So we have now scans. I have also some of those scans. Scans are the best way to, because when you look at scan, you can like really zoom in ZBrush and just like look, okay, what's going on here? And you start, analyzing why my areas don't look good, because actually in the scan. And that's actually a good practice, to buy a scan and try to replicate it as much as you can. that would teach you. Now, before you do all of this, you need to also first know like your bones. You need to know your muscles. Like try and like understand like the skeleton and the bony landmark, and especially the bony landmark that shows on the surface. So as I told you, like the shoulder up here, like this bony landmark, this bone here is visible kinda on the back, like you get like the scapula visible in certain areas. The pelvis is visible here, but it's good to know overall like the general shape of the pelvis. You have the femur bone somewhere here. It's not very visible, but you can see it in the silhouette. It's kind of contributing to the silhouette. You have your elbow. Now, again, like these areas are not perfect. Sorry, my model is not perfect. Also, like here, so for example, you have this here, like this bony landmark here, and you have one on the opposite direction, and it's not very visible, but it will be like roughly here, right? It will be roughly here for me. It will be like a dimple in the back, because with a woman, like they have much more, softer bodies and fuller bodies. So it will be the opposite. It's not going to be protruding. And even on a guy, but the guy is not going to be as much. And in between this, like you have a lot of areas interacting. And with a woman, there's a little bit of fatty area down here. With a guy, probably I wouldn't be doing this. And with a guy, this will be much narrower. Like women have like a wider triangle here. Right? With women, they have a wider triangle here, or you can even say like wider diamond shape if you want to do it like that. They have a wider diamond shape, but with a guy, they have a narrower. Actually, I have not like defined it. I need to go and define it. But anyway, so you need to do that. So yeah, we said images from 3D.sk and scans, that those would help a lot. And you would want to, of course, if you can find a mentor, that would be amazing, because they will teach you if you can afford having a mentor. And if you don't want to have a mentor, maybe buy an anatomy workshop, like get a good one. Don't get like one of those cheap bad ones. A good, like the best of them would be going to Scott Eaton. Scott Eaton is one of the best anatomy teachers out there. And that's kind of like my source of knowledge. Like I took his workshops long time ago. He still offers them. So just type Scott Eaton anatomy workshop. It should take you to his website, and you can sign up for his anatomy. He have a theory one and he have a sculpting one. I would suggest like first start with the theory one, like the theory one 6 weeks and the sculpting one I think 8 weeks. But like the theory is the most important one, and then like just to kind of like learn how to apply some of these things. You don't need to follow exactly how he do things, but it doesn't hurt to kind of like see how he do it, and then develop your own style from there. If you cannot afford taking like Scott Eaton, because usually his workshops are more expensive, a good guy is Speedchar, the guy on YouTube. He have on Udemy, in Udemy, and on his Gumroad, I guess, and in his ArtStation Speed. That's not his name, but like that's his like like what he's known for on online, right? So hopefully we can get his. Okay, actually this is one of his. Yeah, let's just go there. Yes, it's Nikolai Nyandov or something like that. Nyadinov, something like that. Again, ignore. So you could like get his anatomy stuff. They're good. They're good to start with, like this, like female anatomy. It's not realistic 100%, which can like similar to what you're trying to achieve, but it's not important. And he have the anatomy man. I'm not sure if this is like, if you go to his store, because this is his portfolio. So if you go to his store down here, store, you'll see that he have like legs class, he have arms class, and he have like more full body classes. So he have superhuman anatomy. This is for the male, and he have the female body also there. So yeah, and they're not expensive. His, like for now, like they are on discount. Like probably even if they're not on a discount, this is like 20 20. And if you want to get like, those are cheaper, like you can get those, just, like to have more focused, education on the legs and like the different shapes of the legs and the arms. So yeah, just look at his stuff. Again, it's weird, I'm promoting someone else's products. Unfortunately, I don't have my tutorials. I'm planning eventually is at some point to make my own, on my own workshops and tutorials, but it's still like, it's not, I guess like it's not yet the time for me to do such thing. Eventually I'll do it. So I'll put it in chat. And yeah, there it is, like you can. So yeah, there it is. So yeah, so technically that, of course, like we have not covered everything on your images, right? So we technically need to look at like the arms and the legs. But I guess like for now, let's just focus on like the overall proportion. So you can tell like here, like you have very deep area in the back. Your back is not that deep. So just to kind of give you a hint quickly on the back. And as I told you, like this area here look a little bit off. So probably like I'll take it even way higher, So you kind of like need to like push the volume. So like cut all of that and push those so that like this is not too wide, the line there, because it looks weird when it's too wide. So as I said, like most likely, I like if I were to do. And by the way, this is important. Like when you do something like this allows you to have a much nicer, rounder butt. And maybe like that's also another reason why your butt is kind of elongated weirdly, right? And yeah, another thing also, like I see people also doing wrong. First, like you need to define your butt more at the bottom there. Define it. Don't be afraid, and don't take this line way too high. Stop it short somewhere there and like fill this area with the clay, and try and like if you do like the triangle that I showed you there, or the diamond, this will allow you to kind of like define the roundness of the butt cheeks. And by the way, the butt is not round. If you look at mine, what I do is I like to do the bean or the kidney like shape. I push it there, so it does go in here on the side. It goes in, right? So if you look at my model there, if we move her, I tried, but then again, I might even want to, but see like there, I'm trying to push this area. I don't want it to be like very stylized, so when I push, I try to be very gentle. And as I told you, because usually I don't do these very aggressive, because I know that they have like some consequences once I go to Marvelous Designer. And you need to kind of look from different angles just to get the hang of things, and just use brushes to help you, because after you do the move, sometimes you have things look bumpy. So I use and that's why I was talking to earlier when I talked about I don't like Blender, because I like the clay brush. It does allow me to soften transitions, and I want something that is not aggressive, and Blender is very aggressive how it's gonna deal with those brushes. And of course, like now I'm not looking at references, so it would be hard to do this justice without images. And why I said like you need to have more than one set, because unfortunately, like you'll get like models that they will look nice, like their body nice, they're like they have a nice area, like the chest area looks nice to your favorite preference. But what happens in many cases is that, for example, like she would have like a very flat-ish butt, which is not what you want. So having multiple references can help you, understand like different shapes and body types. So this way, like you could, and that's also like a good thing to kind of also collect not just those images, also like look online, look for like bodies for models, bodies for bodybuilders and whatnot, because this does help you understand the body shape. And finally, it's very good to have someone to give you critique. So if you want, you could find yourself a good mentor. you know, this is shameless, but if you want, I could, you know, not always, but I do give lessons. I do teach. So if you have the budget, you could hire me or someone else. Like, it doesn't need, because I don't want to kind of like sound like promoting for myself. You could hire anyone who is, you think you're good and within like your budget, to help you, you know, at least like answer some questions. It doesn't need to be, you know, like someone follow you all the time, because maybe it will be expensive to have a lot of sessions. But maybe like every now and then, like, you know, maybe hire someone, like first like find someone and talk to them, and like find someone who's willing to do that, or maybe that's their job, is to do like that. And they allow, because again, sometimes people like to kind of like be mentoring you from A to Z. Like some people wouldn't allow you, you know, like they wouldn't allow you to just, you know, teach you portion. Like they want to teach everything. You know, yeah, models also do help, especially if the model is more of like, you know, basic body, like that does not show like you know, like you know, like a basic body where you can now again, like that's wrong. And just to rephrase, I'm not talking about basic body, but I mean like if she have like more of like tight clothing, or naked body, or maybe body in a swimsuit or a bikini or something like that, because this way you can read like what did they do around, like, let's say the butt area, what did they do around the chest. But again, if she's kind of like, because many of like those models, when you get them, they will delete the inside of the body, so you'll see like the final model. So you don't know how they built like the body to look good. You see like the clothing and look good, but technically when they were building it, they have this, you know, like underlying body to rely on it to define the volume. So yeah, in total, like you want to do those. Like, sorry man, like I did not, because I have to end the stream here. But we will talk about those. Don't worry. Like, you just go ahead and like do some fixes and look at images. And if you want to, you can send me the updated images, and we can even go over it one more time, and just, you know, talk about other areas and how you can address those other areas if you prefer. And yeah. There are other, like, there's a lot of things that I would love to kind of talk about. Unfortunately, I don't have a lot of time to cover them at the moment, because I have to end the stream here. Anyway, Monolith, thank you for joining the stream. Cookie, if you're still with us, thank you also, my friend, for, you know, joining the stream. And that's it for today. We'll have another stream, probably like, I'm not sure exactly when, but hopefully like maybe, I'll try, I'll see. Maybe tomorrow is hard, so maybe the day after, but don't worry. Like, usually I have at least 3 times a week. Yeah, you will come, Monolith. Have a good day.